Well, looming large over the city of Colorado Springs, Colorado, which, as they stated coincidentally, is the headquarters for the U.S. Olympic team, is a scar in the side of a mountain called the Incline. As you saw, it's a trail of stairs about 1 mile long, rising 2,000 feet. The elevation at its beginning is 6,500 feet, and at its summit is 8,500 feet. Now, that's some pretty thin air if you ever tried to do any physical exertion up at that altitude. It is considered a rite of passage for prospective Olympians during their training and preparations for Olympic Games. Regardless of your sport, whether track and field, wrestling, figure skating, whatever, if you are to be an Olympian, you are challenged to tackle the incline as any Olympian would do. Give it your all. Now, what is the purpose of the incline? Well, apart from its original purpose, which is to help shuttle cars up and down the mountainside, currently it is used first to build up the strength and endurance of the athletes who will compete in the Olympic Games. Now, other non-Olympic athletes get on there and use it to test their mettle. But for Olympians and for athletes who are training, it is specifically designed to build strength and endurance. Secondly, though, it has a different type of purpose. It is also designed to humble you, to remind you of your weakness, and to strengthen your mind and mental capacity to keep going when everything inside you hurts and screams, "Give up." U.S. Greco-Roman wrestler T.C. Dantzler was quoted as saying this about the incline. He said, "Once you think you've done it all in terms of training, you come back to the incline. No matter how many times you do it, the ending never changes. Every time, it kicks your butt." Isn't that nice to know? No matter how much you train, get ready for something, you give it a go, this thing's going to kill me. And yet they keep doing it. Well, as we begin our series this week on Olympic faith, what the London Games have to teach us about following Jesus, it's only appropriate that we start here, where so many Olympians began long before leaving for the London Games, here at the incline. Now, in the first message of the series, we are going to focus on training, which must take place before we ever actually compete. In fact, more than take place, training becomes the centerpiece of the preparation process. What do most athletes spend more time doing? Competing or training? Training. We're going to see the 100-meter sprint happen here in the next 2 weeks. And Usain Bolt is going to defend his world record 100-meter time. I think it's 9.57 or 0.58. Less than 10 seconds of actual competition. And he has trained nonstop for the last 4 years from the last Olympics. All for what? Less than 10 seconds. For him, training is everything. Now, how many of you have ever trained for something? Raise your hand if you ever had to train for something. Any marathoners, half marathoners, you were various athletes? Okay, those of you know what training is like. How many of you ever showed up for a gym or fitness class hoping to get in shape, and you underestimated or were just flat out naive about what was about to take place and how hard it would be? Anybody know that experience? Yes. We had a women's fitness night that has happened intermittently over the past year, and I've heard from several Rooftop ladies who showed up expecting a nice casual evening exercise and got a little bit more than what they had bargained for. Well, this has happened to me twice in my life, where I underestimated what I was getting into. In both cases, I was in pretty good shape, but what was required of me was more than I was physically ready for. In both cases, I didn't quit, but my body did. And at some point during the activity that I was doing and kept doing, and if you ever get there where all of a sudden you see the darkness on the peripheral vision, and you're like, uh-oh, this is not good, bad things are happening, and you don't know, but you've gone pale, the blood has left your face, and the person watching you hopefully has recognized, stop, whoa, settle down, otherwise you're about to, or blow chunks, whichever is your preference. I've twice had that happen, and luckily neither time did I actually pass out, but was able to sit down and take a rest before it got the best of me. Now, I have learned some things about training in my time. I'm no Olympic athlete, not even close, but I served in the United States Marine Corps for 5 years after high school. And for those 5 years, my life in one way or another included training in almost every way. Physical training, mental training, vocational training, strategic training, military training, weapons training. I never actually fought in a war, joining the Marines in 1993 after Desert Storm and leaving in 98 before Afghanistan and Iraq took place. But though I never fought in a war, I honestly believe I was ready to do so. And how do I know this? Training. Training is what allowed me to believe that I could not just survive should I find myself in a battle or in a wartime situation, but even thrive as me and my unit worked, sweat, and trained together. We trained hard, we trained well, we trained early, we trained after hours, we traveled and trained. And we did everything we could to prepare ourselves for what we would possibly encounter. The Olympic athlete does the same. All athletes do. They work, they sweat, they sacrifice, they suffer pain. All for the purpose of readiness and confidence when the moment of competition comes. It's interesting when you look at training. Have any of you followed the Michael Phelps saga that took place Saturday night? Michael Phelps did what 4 years ago in Beijing? 8 gold medals. Set the record. Beat Mark Spitz's record from 72 of 7 gold medals. Well, he's had a few difficulties these past 4 years, and he says outright, after Beijing, with my maniacal approach to training, I just needed a break. And he did break. And he's had various run-ins with the law and other things happen, and he has all the potential, as we know, in the world. But he acknowledges his training has not been what it was. And in spite of all the skills that he still has, and still being an age where he could and should thrive, his first Olympic event since he was 15 years old did he compete in Saturday night and not even place in the medal round. And if you listen to him in the interviews, it had so much to do with his training. Well, the Bible also talks about training. In 1 Timothy 4, 7, and 8 says this, verse 7, have nothing to do with irreverent, silly myths. Rather, train yourself for godliness. For while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. Now, these are the words of the Apostle Paul to his mentee Timothy. And notice what he says. For all you gym rats here, and I say that with the most affection that I can, your physical and bodily training is of some value. Not total value, not most value, but some value. So that is acknowledged here by the Apostle Paul. But what is of greater value? Training for godliness. Training for godliness. And so today, we've boiled this down. There's a number of different ideas we could take on the training, but we've boiled it down, the training phase of our message, into 3 parts, and all of them are brought to you this morning by the letter P. The first being what you do in training. First thing you must do is you must perceive the goal. You must visualize in your mind what is your objective. What do you want to see accomplished? What do you want to see happen? If you talk to any of the great athletes, any of the great talented athletes who have excelled at their craft, at their area of physical expertise, they will tell you that it is as much mental in their mind of picturing what they must do. The batter standing at the plate has pictured in their mind how they're going to hit, where that ball is going to be, how it's going to look coming out. Anticipation. Training is not just simply going out and swinging balls at the batting cage. Training, it requires a mental picture of what we want to become, of where we want to find ourselves being. So it is in the Christian life. Becoming like Christ is our objective. Understanding what he looks like. Believing that however Christ looks, that is what we should strive for. That is our goal. This is the person whom we want to appear like. This is the person whom we want to reflect in our own life. I don't know if in your Christian life, if you have a goal, if you have the picture of the person you want to become, but I want to encourage you, if you have not done so, to make Jesus and his persona that person. And you might say, well, Jeremy, but I don't know what Jesus really looked like. Physical appearance is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about his character, who he was, the type of person he was, and that is readily available to us where? In his word. And if you struggle here this morning to understand a picture of what Jesus looks like, I would then ask you, have you invested the time to understand and to get a picture of what he looks like from his word? You might love the Lord, you might know the word, but are you in the word? And this is the only place where you're going to get that picture of what Jesus is like. Philippians 1:20 and 21 says this. This is Paul talking in prison, waiting to die. But this is what he says. As it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but that with full courage, now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. For Paul, living as Christ was everything. And here he was in jail, about to be martyred, executed for his faith. And at that moment, he still said to live as Christ. You and I, it's harder for us. We've got jobs, we've got families, we've got all these things pulling at us, all these commitments that we've made. We've got our own lazy tendencies. We're not really having to live the disciplined life. Nonetheless, Christ is our objective. Secondly, there's a reward. Matt's going to talk about this in more detail later on in the series, but it's important to understand. Why are these athletes training? Did Michael Phelps just go out because, I got nothing else to do with my life, I think I'll try to win 8 gold medals? No. Notoriety, fame, beating Mark Spitz, 8 gold medals, these are all, being the best, these are all aspects of the reward that he was considering when he was applying himself to train for the Beijing Olympics in 2008. And we too, as Christians, can no less consider the reward. Because it does two things. One, it takes our eyes off of this earth, which is not nearly as attractive as we want to make it out to be. And it heightens the beauty of heaven, which should always be our focus and our goal. Because the eyes that are set on heaven are willing to let go of the things here on earth. Philippians 3:14, again in the book of Philippians, the Apostle Paul later says, I press on towards the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. He had a goal, a reward in mind. And so as we perceive the goal, we need to remember that Christ is our objective, looking like him, and the reward is something that we can and should pay attention to. Now, the second piece of this training process is to put off sinfulness. Just like anyone who enters into training has to put off or stop doing things that will hinder their training, so too we as followers of Christ are commanded time and again to put off and stop doing sinful things. In Ephesians 4:22, the Apostle Paul tells the people of Ephesus, put off your old self. That means you consciously decide to stop doing and being who you were, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through its deceitful desires. In Colossians 3:8, the Apostle Paul to the people at Colossae says this, but now you must put them all away. Anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. We live by grace. Our salvation was given to us by grace. Jesus alone can accomplish salvation for us, and we must receive that by placing our faith in him. But with grace also comes the strength and the ability to put off, to say no, to repent, to turn from. And we are held responsible, and we are given the challenge of stopping, of turning, of changing. And some of us here today, right now in our mind, are 1 or 2 or 3 things that we are doing or have control over us that we know, if I'm ever going to be serious about training, this cannot be present. And I will venture to you that that's the Holy Spirit bringing to mind that thing, that action, that habit, that whatever that you know you need to, by the grace and strength of God, consciously put off. It goes on further in the New Testament. In Hebrews 12:1, as we run the race, we're told, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin which clings so closely. Have any of you ever run with weights on, resistance training? Okay, some of you have. You can now do it in wind tunnels, or they'll put a parachute on your back. When I was a kid, they just strapped leg weights to your leg. And they'd chafe and they'd rub up and down, but that's how you jumped higher. That's how you ran faster. So I remember going out and lumbering around with these leg weights on. And you take them off, and how do you feel? You feel like you can fly. You feel like you can sprint. You really aren't that much faster, but the resistance makes you feel like you are Carl Lewis, at least for about 20 seconds or so, before reality sets in. It's that same type of thing. Sin in our lives is like training with leg weights on. And yet, you know what? We think we are running without. It's one thing to run with leg weights on when you know you have leg weights on and you can take them off. It's another to carry the weight, to have the resistance, and to think that this is you at your full speed. We are deceived by the sin in our lives. We are deceived by the things that grab hold and don't let go. Romans 6:11 says this, so you also must consider yourselves dead to sin and alive to God in Christ Jesus. Listen to that, Romans 6:11. So you also must consider yourselves. We have the grace and the power of God, but God lays at our feet. You must consider yourselves. We must consider ourselves. I must consider myself dead. I must put off. It's a conscious activity. Matt mentioned some time ago about when he was running. He's taking a little break with some hip issues, but he was up running every morning, 5 o'clock, getting up to the gym or doing whatever on the elliptical or on the treadmill, or he was running River to Pear. And he told us a story about the alarm going off at 5 and the choice he had every morning at 5 o'clock. And there always the choice was to hit the snooze and to go back to sleep. Or even hit the snooze and I'll get up, but I'll just get a cup of coffee. I'll ease into my day. It's the same choice. He chose, he didn't hit the snooze, he got up and he ran. And in our spiritual lives, we have to make that same conscious choice. Like the athlete who gets up before dawn to go train, decide to run, we have to choose to put off the things that will entangle. Thirdly, not only do we just put off sinfulness, but we what? We put on righteousness. We put off consciously, and then we put on. Ephesians 4:22 and 24, which we read the verse 22 a little bit earlier. Let's read the whole thing. We'll read 22 again. Put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life, and is corrupt through deceitful desires. And to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. It's not enough just to put off the things that hinder us. I wanted to lose some weight at the beginning of the year. I'd slowly been creeping up into a danger zone in my own mind. Okay, Jeremy, you've kind of reached that number. That'll be my business, what that number is. But that number on the scale, and you're like, fine. I got to do something about this. Finally, Julie says, after years of watching this progression and telling me about it and getting no response from me in response to that, but I decided, okay, I got to do something about it. So what did I do? I put off sugar. I put off carbs, things, simple carbs, sugars, even as much as fruits. And I went with kind of the, I don't know what it's called now. It's been called so many things. But the primarily protein diet with minimal, not completely nut, but minimal carbohydrates. And in the month of January, I dropped about 14 to 15 pounds. The first 8 were easy. And over the next month or two, I dropped down, I settled back to what was a comfortable weight. Not my goal weight, was a comfortable weight. And then I hit the plateau. But we won't talk about that right now. I had to do without something. I had to put off sugar, and that was a choice I had to make. What I also did is I also had to put on something. I had to put on an early bedtime. I couldn't stay up till 12, 1 o'clock at night just kind of meandering or watching TV or whatever, because what's going to happen when you're 12 and 1? Munchies, fourth meal, hello, late night trip to Taco Bell when everybody's sleeping just because that 99-cent menu's just been revamped. No, I had to make a choice to go to bed. I also had to make a choice to get up. I had to put on, and I had to make a choice to not shut off my alarm when it went off at 5:30, to get up, to do my quiet time, to get my day started, so that my cycle would work. Because if I get up earlier, I'll be tired at just the right time, I'll go to bed, and I'll be in the rhythm that I need to be in. Did you know that your sleep before midnight is, they say, is double the value of sleep after midnight for how you feel in a day? So if you're going to bed at midnight and you wonder why you're tired, try going to bed at 9 and just wake up 3 hours earlier. You'll feel much more refreshed, maybe after a week or so. But this was what I had to do. It's not just what I had to stop, but I had to put on some things that I wasn't doing. 1 Corinthians 9:25 describes it like this. Paul, again, to the people at Corinth. To see this theme, Paul challenging all these churches that he's engaged with about how they should live. He says this: every athlete exercises what? Self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, something that will pass, a gold medal, something that will tarnish, be thrown in a box, sold on eBay 30 years later when they're broke, or their house gets robbed. Okay? Something perishable. But we, Christians, believers, and imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air. But I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should what? Not be disqualified. We need to put on self-control. We need to put on discipline. Some of us here, myself included, personal, daily discipline, it kind of flies in the face of Christian freedom. Oh, but I'm free in Christ, and I can do what I want because I glory in the joy and the love of our Lord Jesus. Well, yes, we do glory in the love and joy of our Lord Jesus, but He gave us ultimate grace. And He has also given us a lifetime to steward that grace. And if we are without discipline, if we just indulge ourselves, whatever the appetite, we are going to come before Him at the end when the rewards are being handed out, and we're going to, well, I lived freely, and we had the opportunity to freely lay down the freedom to be disciplined and self-controlled and to make ourselves slaves to righteousness. And this is a tricky piece. When we talk about training, we need to talk about this, because some people, when they come to Jesus Christ, come with this guilt, and they come with this sense of, I have to do this, I have to check the box, I have to go to church, I have to read my Bible, I have to do all these things, or I will not be accepted, I will not be worthy before the Lord. They feel condemnation and judgment because they're not good enough, and in many cases they don't do anything, and they just kind of ignore it and live laissez-faire, their Christian life. Well, newsflash here, you're right. You're not worthy. None of us are. That's why Jesus came. That's why He died. He is worthy. And in being worthy, He has given us the opportunity and the ability to live as He lived. Did Jesus live in the full manifest of His powers His 33 years here on earth? Did He indulge Himself, His every whim and His every desire? Inasmuch as every desire was what the will of His Father wanted, yes, but not the will of His flesh. And you and I have freedom. But freedom is not a license to sin. It is not a license to neglect the gift that God has given. And we can see time and again Paul, of all people, Paul telling us, do not neglect the gift that God has given you. Discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. What steps can you take to better steward the grace of God in your life? What steps is God calling you to take to not stand before the spiritual incline and have a heart attack 10 stairs up because you're just that out of spiritual shape? God is calling all of us to prepare and to ready ourselves. It could be any number of things. It could be reading the Word. It could be prayer. It could be fellowship. It could be involvement in a small group. It could be our sleep schedule. It could be what we eat. It could be our lack of physical training, and it permeates. Mr. Paul Mueller will attest. He's not here, but when he went on his deluge of weight loss a couple years ago, the discipline in his life was paramount in allowing that to happen. And his spiritual life flourished in conjunction with that. They're all related. What steps might God be calling you to make? I want to close with a story here this morning. It's not the incline story, but it's a story that took place on Kansas Tower. Everybody see that? Isn't Hawaii beautiful? I love that I lived there for 4 years. That is Kansas Tower. It's the radar tower up top, the highest point on Marine Corps Base Hawaii, which is where I was stationed for 4 years of my time in the Marine Corps. And it has a trail that leads up to it, a road, like a service road. Not a full road, but just enough for a vehicle to get up. And it was the incline of Marine Corps Base Hawaii. So when you were doing some type of training regiment, when you were doing some type of qualifying, when you had when you wanted to join recon or scout sniper platoon, you had to go through an indoc, you were going to see that hill once, if not multiple times. And periodically throughout our morning PT, our morning physical training, we would take a stab at Kansas Tower. Now, I don't like to lose. In fact, I like to win. Just be honest with you. And I like to be the first one to the top of a mountain. I'm not a sprinter. I'm like Gimli from Lord of the Rings. I do well over short, well, I don't do well over short distances, actually. But I do have the short legs to go with the dwarf. But I love mountains. I love hills. And Kansas Tower, the first time I ran it, kicked my butt. And I thought, I'm not going to let it do that again. And so when other guys at night would kind of be doing their thing after hours, I would go out and I'd go on my little 4-mile run, 4.5-mile run, and I'd start off, and one was right along this beach. There's a road just on the other side that comes along, and you go up through housing and down through housing, and you go around by the Officers Club, and there on the back side from where the front gate is, you find yourself at the base of KT. And you look up, and it's an incline up this way, and you see it disappear, and it goes up, and eventually ends at the top. And then it would begin. And I would run. And I would run. Get a little ditty in my mind, a little pace. I can do this, I can do this. I have my little worship song. Hail Jesus, you're my king. And I had to repeat, and so I'd do the repeat. Your life is me to sing. You know, boom, boom, boom. And the feet would just keep on moving. Just like in the opening video. What did they tell you not to do? Don't stop. Keep the legs pumping. Hail, hail, Lion of Judah. And the song, it's cheesy now, but in 1995, it was the hit, especially in Hawaii. It was originally sung by a church out in Hawaii. But I would repeat this anthem over and over to get to the top of Kansas Tower. It hurt. It was hard. No one loves the run to Kansas Tower. No one looks forward to the run up the incline. But we recognize the role it plays in our lives. And when our unit would go out and run, when our unit there's always this friendly competition. There was never an award given, but when a group of 40 Marines is at the base of a hill, and all right, we'll meet everybody at the top. What's the instinct of everybody, most people at the bottom of that hill? Who's going to get there first? And again, I'm no Olympic athlete. But I can maybe count on one hand the times that I did not get to the top of that hill first. There was pride. There was planning. I wanted to win. We can apply those same principles to our spiritual life. What did Paul repeatedly say? I don't want to dishonor my Lord. I don't want to be disqualified with my own life. That's an internal pride in his Lord and in God that he will run in such a way that he will not dishonor and not be disqualified. That's a personal pride. And that type of pride is okay when our guiding force is the glory of God. And so I want to encourage you and challenge you this morning. How is God asking you to train? Maybe to start training, maybe to improve your training as we continue on with this Olympic venture in the weeks ahead. Let me pray.